Are you calling for more atheistic proselytizing?
Oh, yes.
Can you repeat that question? Repeat the question?
So are you calling for more atheistic proselytizing?
Okay.
I would suggest that it would be a mistake to underestimate the Christian right. I deal with a lot of fundamentalist Christians on a daily basis, and many of them are as adamant as any Muslim that you will meet on the literalness of the Bible, on their responsibility to carry out the commands of God. They might not be as visible as the Islamicists, but the Christianists are pretty scary.
Oh, I don't disagree that many of them are pretty scary. Now, I do think now that we are at a time, though, where the most harm they do is to themselves and, unfortunately, their children at times. But I cannot think of a single substantive policy point that the Christian right has dragged us backwards in. We have been able to successfully ward them off in just about everything.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Don't ask, don't tell was implemented by a Democratic president with a Democratic Congress.
Okay, so your complaint is that the Democrats gave in to the Christian right then? Well, that was your response. Your response was like, well, they're bad.
They're bad, but they're not cutting off hands and heads. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But with something like gay rights and gay marriage, I mean,
Some would given the opportunity.
They would be.
Right, but the idea is that they aren't given the opportunity, and even if they did attempt to do that, given the opportunity, our justice system would put a stop to it because it's not a policy thing. It's not a legal thing that they could cut off hands and heads. Whereas in a lot of Middle Eastern countries,
I am not so sure that given the political power that they have managed to amass in the past 20 years, and I remember before, yes, I'm very old, I remember before the Christian right came into power, it was quite a different world.
But mainly it's my contention that the issues that we're facing, when juxtaposed next to the ones that others face internationally, are so frivolous. Don't ask, don't tell is an inconvenience, it is not an oppression.
How? Go ahead. Okay.
Well, okay, so I'm an atheist, but I identify much further on the left side of the political spectrum. But I agree with you 100% on these issues, because I have a close friend of mine who's very, very left-wing, very liberal, is really into politics, and I get into conversations with him all the time. And his main issue with Islam is sensitivity and tolerance. And I've been doing some research, not as much as you've done, into what's been going on in, the culture of Islam and everything. And I just see a lot of really scary things. I mean, recently I think the UN even voted on a resolution to make it illegal to criticize someone's religion. And you can't do that. Like you said, religion has to be criticized. It doesn't matter what religion, who's bringing it up. Anything that comes into the public and affects more than just that person directly has to be open to criticism. So if you're going to live the religion in public, then it should be able to be openly criticized. Because if it can't, then what's the point? So I agree with you on and I hope that there are more people like you that come up and start laying these things out, not just against Islam, because you're right, Christian right still does need to be monitored. The Catholic Church still needs to be monitored. I mean, look at what's going on in that community and has been going on through the past in that community. So we just have to, we can't go, oh well, it's Islam and people might react violently. Well, that's the exact problem. You have to,
people would react
that they would react violently is not your fault for pointing it out. It's their fault for being violent. And you can't be tolerant of that saying, well, you did provoke them to violence.
Tolerance has to be a two-way street.
Exactly.
She asked for it.
Not tolerant to tolerate the intolerant.
Exactly.
For the record, they didn't make it illegal. It was a non-binding resolution.
Yeah, it was non-binding.
But they have passed
Everything in
several
the UN
versions
is
of it.
Yeah.
Did you want to?
All right. So I think the number of Muslims in the world is like a really, really big number. So yeah. So when you see all the radical Muslims, like it really stands out. I think we were talking about one of the biases in the beginning, that you only see like the ones that are really bad. So I kind of think it seems to me that we're kind of we're taking the view of the fanatical Muslims and applying it to everyone. So I guess this is a question to anyone who might know more about this. Just based on statistics, do you think we're like, not to like put down the threat from the radicals, do you think we're like kind of over-exaggerating how we should view all the Muslims?
A couple of points on that. The first one, I would go back to the point I made about, of course, most Muslims are moderate in the sense that they don't go blowing up buildings. But there are this 10% who are true believers, and a minority of them will be exhorted to violence. A fat lot of good the moderate ones do when they go out there and not taking active steps to quelch this.
So I'm just wondering, like, should we be applying like our anger against the radicals against the moderates also, or should we kind of like let the moderates do what they do and
the moderates abet it and are complicit in it when they don't speak out forcefully. And there might be more sympathy amongst these moderates than you were saying. I remember a poll that Sam Harris cited in his End of Faith that showed that the floor of in a Muslim country of the population that said that suicide bombing in the defense of Islam was at least sometimes, even rarely acceptable, was 20%, and that's in Turkey. The rest said that it was never acceptable, but it went as high as into the 70s in the Ivory Coast, and I mean, we're dealing with something unprecedented in the West.
And I mean, from what I got from the speech, it doesn't sound like you're advocating attacking the people, you're attacking the religion, saying that it is these ideals that are not ethical, not moral, not you people, which I think is the important distinction. I mean, and what you touched on about the percentages of people who are radical and taking these violent actions compared to the large ones, you can look back to the Crusades and you have those same, I mean, you don't have every single Christian going on these crusades into the Islamic-controlled countries. You know, it was a percentage of them. It wasn't good. It's not something that should be aspired to or anything. You should still condemn it, but there definitely were that number of people. It's the same sort of thing. It's the small number of people that are the trouble.
I've been following along in the chat room, and a number of those folks have been very vehemently disagreeing with you, but one of them wanted
I'm not used to that.
One of them wanted to ask you, what do you see as the difference between a skeptic and an atheist?
Skepticism is a disposition that I apply to life completely. I'm always trying to ask the questions that are being buried. This is why I consider myself in many ways a classical conservative. When I hear people on the left talking about egalitarianism as a goal and equality in economics here and there, they're talking about goals. I want to talk about processes. I want to talk about who decides. I want to talk about how that person is appointed, how he retains power, whether that power is going to be checked. I have a skepticism toward human motives in general, human action in general. I don't put my trust in abstract ideals, goals, compassion. Good intentions don't cut it for me.
I'm unclear about your position on the mosque. Are you opposed to any mosque being built, a mosque led by that particular imam, a mosque built in that neighborhood? It's not a ground zero. I mean, it's in the vicinity, but it's certainly not on ground zero, and it wasn't ever intended to sort of do that. Or are you asking for that nobody should support that mosque by boycotting that, none of those members should attend there, and that would drive it down? Or are you saying that there should be government power to prevent that from being built? I don't understand what it is you were saying we should do.
They can build a Death to America center on top of Ground Zero itself if they acquire the property legally. I don't care about that. I'm talking about a moral stance that we have to take in opposition to it. In principle, I don't want any mosques built anywhere, and I don't want any churches built anywhere.
But you were singling out this one.
But you don't care.
So, I mean, that's what I'm trying to find out. Is it against any mosque, that island, that place?
Right, talking about this one because it's a news story.
And are you just saying, we should like, but hey, it's not ours anyway. Don't go to that McDonald's. Don't go to that church. You're not going to go to that church. Or are you saying we should do something so that the government should exert power so it should...
No government intervention.
Okay, so you're not a member of the mosque. No government intervention.
No.
What's your beef?
Just because I want to allow something doesn't mean I have to approve of it. I don't know where this idea came from that anything that we like has to be mandatory and loved and everything we hate has to be banned.
Okay. So you would suggest that they build it and we all pick it, or whine about it, or complain about it. I'm just trying to understand what it is you're trying to say.
Yes, I want a cultural atmosphere that stands foursquare for our secular liberal values.
And that protest sign should be, don't build it here, don't build any mosque, not this island? What is it? What is it you're trying to do?
We can argue around the edges about what messaging should be or what's most practical, but again, the core has to be unequivocal.
I'm trying to understand your core. What is your core?
Why is this issue important?
Why did you...
Well, that's
what
what
you're advocating for.
Secularism, liberalism, classical feminism, equal rights under the law for gays. What? I laid this out in the
At
speech.
that mosque, but not any other mosque.
I think you pointed out this one as a prominent example.
I'm using this one as a proxy for the larger argument, just because it was a news story.
I think I can actually agree at least that far on it. Is I look at it and he seems to be saying, look, I don't want any mosque, but I still have to respect the legal privileges that they have if they go about it the right way.
It's legal and you may do it, but shame on you.
Correct. And that much at least I would agree with. I don't agree with a lot of the politics, but I agree with that.
And from, if what I understand is correct, if it wasn't a mosque, if it was
A church.
If it was a church.
A synagogue.
That, I believe you would also be opposed to that.
Absolutely.
Right, so it's less this specific instance and more this instance as a member of
example.
Right, as a member of the set of all of the instances.
So would you say shame on you to all mosques?
Shame on you to all mosques.
Yeah.
Shame on you to all mosques.
Yeah.
Religious places. Blah, blah,
Shame
blah.
on faith. Reason built that tower, faith knocked it down.
Yeah, we're going to call at this point.